So Borderlands 4 is bigger than ever and we've got lots of new mechanics to look out for. That is why if you want to make the most out of them or are just looking for a big power boost early, I've got just the tips for you. Also, I'm super happy to say this video has been sponsored by 2K themselves, so totally check out the game using the links in the description and the pinned comment down below. That being said, the biggest tip I have for you that will drastically increase your damage and arguably your fun factor too is the new licensing part system. So every weapon in the game now has a chance to drop with multiple parts licensed from any of the manufacturers in the lore, giving you multiple of those unique effects at the same time if you're lucky, which as you would imagine can literally change even the most basic everyday weapon into something absurdly busted with the right combination. So let me give you an example with two versions of the same legendary I have here. One is the default kick bowler, which is pretty fun, but it's not going to melt faces. However, I also have another version of it, which is the Jacobs Part 1. This one has an accessory to it that obviously gives us the ricochet on critical hits. And the thing about this is that by default, it throws in a projectile that bounces or well explodes into 4 other projectiles. Meaning that if we get the Jacobs ricochet, we can actually make any of those 4 projectiles to also ricochet other projectiles that themselves can actually ricochet, or at the very least that's the current functionality. So what this means is that with this combination, as long as we perform critical hits, it's going to do all of those extra bounces that can also ricochet, which as you would imagine makes this gun at least 10 times better. But like I said, that's only half of it. We can actually bring it one step above, and that is via enhancements. So you're going to not take too long until this slot becomes available. However, enhancements provide insane buffs to different manufacturers. You can see we have Torg, we have Hyperion, Atlas. However, in this case, the one that I'm using is Jacobs. And the one that I have makes it so that I have a chance that my ricochet also happens on non-critical hits. Essentially meaning that even though I have a melee weapon, I can actually benefit from a Jacobs buff simply because I have that part accessory on it. And this is going to make it even stronger because now I have a ton more chances to actually cause my projectiles to spawn other projectiles by ricocheting even on non-critical hits. And as you would imagine, that gets absolutely insane in real world conditions, and it's just one of the examples. There are many others that may be much stronger. So that is why some of the best options I recommend are of course the Jacobs enhancements, either the one that gives you 1 extra ricochet or the one that has a chance to make ricochet on non-critical hits. Vladov 30% chance for extra projectiles was another option I liked, so if you find one of these, it's really great too. Or for TDR, the one that spawns rockets from defeating enemies can be very strong. Or additionally, you can go with the Torg version that increases explosive damage and also the AoE range. In this case, both of these options worked really great during the leveling process. Now moving on to number 2, your vehicle has a power slide mechanic which lets you speed boost a lot more often. So you can pull this off by holding down spacebar or RB on the controller, which lets you enter a drift mechanic. And if you keep holding it, not only does it charge up your boost meter back up without waiting, if you hold it up until the 3rd level, you will get a few extra seconds where the gauge doesn't even deplete. In fact, if you pull this off successfully, you can literally have your boost meter actually charging as you use the speed boost and then still not drop at all with the gauge for a couple of extra seconds during it, letting you travel to your destination much quicker. In fact, you will even gain access to different manufacturer drives in your vehicle customization tab that drastically affect different stats such as speed, acceleration, handling, and so on. And you're going to get better and better versions of these, especially by completing some of these challenges. That is why it's always worth it to consult with the challenge menu. But moving on to number 3, if you want some extra XP and rewards on top, I recommend always grab contracts, especially if you're about to do a story mission within the same region anyway, because chances are that contract requires you to maybe take down a certain number of enemies, which you're going to be defeating anyway during those story moments within that region. So you're going to notice 1, 2, 3, even 4 of those contracts popping off during a very short time span. So in this case, some of the best contract types I recommend recommend are any that require you to eliminate a number of enemies, a specific bounty, or finding an object. But whatever you do, don't really go for the ones that require you to retrieve a specific item. You have to carry it back and you have to do it by foot. Also, you can only have up to 5 contracts at any given time, but you can go ahead and abandon the ones that you don't want to complete any longer. And also, they obviously reset, so it's worth it to actually go back at safe houses and yeah, just grab them again. And speaking of that, my next recommendation is to obviously unlock as many safe houses as you possibly can. Main reason is this is your main way of fast traveling in the game, and eventually you're going to just bounce between locations to complete missions, so it's going to help a ton to get there quickly. Plus, it gives you access to the previously mentioned contracts and also the vending machines. Which brings us to number 4. We finally got a take as junk feature, so now you can literally grab an item from the ground and it gets automatically set as junk by just pressing Q whenever you loot items. And now you can just go ahead and instantly sell everything at any vending machine, also making some money in the process. That is why I highly encourage you to always grab all of the loot as much as you can from the ground as junk, because you can just sell it right away. And this is going to help a ton since repeating boss fights now costs money, but trust me, you're going to be swimming in it if you just follow this simple step. And this brings us to number 5. Let me give you a tip to get a lot more legendaries even early on. Obviously, main story is one of them, but once you finish a big fight and you get at a boss fight, once you defeat it, don't leave just yet. Instead, you're often going to notice now you have a portal that you can take back before the boss arena. And there's a good chance that right now or after fully finishing that story, you're now going to get a Moxxi's Encore machine spawning, which is how you're going to now go ahead and repeat that boss fight at another chance to also get a legendary from it. And that has been one of the primary ways I've done to actually get legendaries, just farming Moxxi's Encore machines and grabbing that once it dropped. But there are other even quicker ways. So one of them is by defeating the Ripper drill sites, or the bunkers, or auger mines, all of which eventually lead to a boss fight. I have not encountered a single one that doesn't yet, and there are dozens of them across the map. But to be more specific, drill sites aren't locked behind any story progression, so you can just go ahead and unlock the first ones and basically get the boss fight at the end of a few enemy waves. For the other two, you will need to progress a little bit into the main campaign. So for example, in the case of the bunkers, you're going to need a special canister to destroy the immunity armor on it. Meanwhile, for the mines, you can only pass through them after a certain point in the snow region, which is why I recommend going there first compared to the other side. And since we're on the subject of boss fights, at number 6, my next tip for you is that side quests are absolutely worth it in this game. In fact, a lot of them, especially the faction related missions, will at some point lead to a boss fight in the chain of quests that you're going to complete for the various factions. So in this case, it's totally worth it, but keep a lookout for some of the others that are nondescript, because even those can actually lead to some very interesting boss fights and some very challenging ones, I might add, that you normally cannot get otherwise. So totally worth it. Like, the side content in this game is really good. And since you're going to be doing a lot of this side content, you're also going to get a lot of storage deck upgrade points, which is why my next tip is to actually go ahead and try to max out or get close to that for your backpack upgrade. Reason is because of the metric ton of items we're going to be collecting anyway. And then followed by whichever type of weapon you use the most. So in this case, I was using shotguns most, which is why I leveled up the ammo capacity, but you are free to go with whatever suits your playstyle. And by the way, the quickest way to actually get those points in the first place is exactly from the activities I just mentioned. Safe houses, or the silos, bunkers, and even the drills pretty much give you 40 points each. So they are some of the best, and I would argue also quite quick. But moving on to number 8, what's a Vault Hunter without his vault? Well, in this case, that would deprive you of a very important buff. On top of the fact that it gives you access to, of course, a whole new farmable area and also a very cool boss fight. At the end of it, once you finish it the first time, you get a permanent upgrade to your jetpack. In this case, you're going to get a lot more regen to it, and pretty much every vault gives you a buff like this that stacks with one another. So you're going to be moving a lot swifter in the end game, and you're going to be floating for a lot longer. Now, to find vaults in the first place, you're going to need to find the key fragments, and you're going to reveal their location mainly via order silos. Pretty much every major region has 3 of these silos that each indicate the general location of one of the fragments. But of course, you can also grab them before that if you know their precise location. Otherwise, you can just use the proximity indicator as you get close to them. And once you got all 3 of them, this is then going to reveal that vault, or at least its general location, once again within the same region, which you can then go ahead, discover and unlock. Of course, a bigger guide on how to find all of the vaults in the game will follow up soon, so stay tuned. Moving on to number 9, there's a replay mission mechanic in this game that doesn't just work for main story missions, but even for some of the side content. So it's totally worth it because you get extra rewards on top, or if you missed a specific achievement only available during that moment, this is going to pretty much bring you at the very beginning of that story mission, giving you full access to everything leading to the very important moment that might have happened during that. But very helpful, and there's actually a whole gameplay loop surrounding this that gets even better once you finish the main campaign and get into the end game, but we're going to talk about that in a separate video. For the time being, you can actually do this and get some extra rewards on top, or even missing achievements. And finally, to number 10, here are a few quickfire tips that didn't belong to any singular category. One is that a lot of the weapons will have alternate firing modes by pressing C, which is going to help a ton if you want to swap between different elementals, or in this case, different types of functionalities. Very helpful, especially if you're a beginner. Another one, don't neglect checking out the vending machines. Some of the daily rewards can actually be quite strong, maybe even a big upgrade compared to what you have. And yes, it can even include legendaries. Speaking of which, you can also find them in toilets and outhouses. Definitely check those out too. Additionally, if you see bubbles, go there. You're going to find a world boss. World bosses like these are named badasses, which basically have higher chances at better loot. They are much more challenging, and you can even see them spawning in multiple other regions. So it's not going to be a fixed location, but they will actually spawn around as you move across the map. Keep in mind, however, that they seem to have a timer for how long they linger. For example, at one point, one of them despawned because I just took too long for him to actually be taken down. In this case, I think it was about 1.5 to 2 minutes tops. So keep in mind, you don't have much time to actually defeat them. Another one is that the lost loot machine makes a return. You're going to find them pretty much in major hubs. So for example, there's one right here at the launch pad, and this will let you recover any lost loot or loot that you haven't picked from the ground. Just keep in mind that it has minimum capacity, which you can actually go ahead and upgrade via SDUs, but it's going to be limited early on. Here you're going to also find a respec station. Do, however, keep in mind that it's going to cost money to actually enter the respec menu, even if you don't actually end up using it. However, if you do end up using it, you can respec as many times as long as you're still in this screen before actually fully committing and pressing accept at the end of it. Which means you can test out as much as you want, but I still recommend online build planners in case you want to save on some money. And finally, there's also a bank in town over here. I highly encourage you to use it and pretty much pass on low-level items, especially ones that you found to be really good, onto some of your other alts. You never know when you're going to play with a different character, and some of those items, especially weapons or even some of those enhancements, can actually help them. And also, quick tip over here, definitely try to save on any item that has some of these extra set bonuses. You're going to want to keep those because we can transfer those to endgame items later down the line once we finish the main campaign. But this is pretty much it with the video. Again, huge shout out to 2K for sponsoring this video. And once again, totally check out Borderlands 4 by following the links down below in the pinned comment and in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.